Oh, hey there guys, welcome to the channel. If you're not familiar, in this channel we nerd out on everything engineering to the point that we get down to the details that you could probably only find interesting at 3 a.m. when you're trying to avoid going to bed. But if that sounds like your cup of tea, then stick around. Today we have a direct product comparison, which is a little different than normal, and it's also a little bit different than normal in that this one I designed myself. So we get to go behind the scenes a little bit in the development process, which I normally can't do because I'm taking apart products that I did not design. Somebody else designed, another company designed, and so I can estimate about the details and why they did certain things, but I can't be sure. I can just go off of what I see. And in this case, I can know exactly why the engineer did what they did because that person is me. All right, so this video is going to have a number of parts that you can skip to. I'm going to have the video broken down by these parts, so you can skip to the part that interests you the most. Or again, if you're trying to avoid going to bed for as long as possible, then you're going to want to watch the whole thing. All right, so first I'm going to go over the background of why I even developed this product in the first place, what the old product was lacking, what I wanted to improve, what I felt was not as good, and then the behind the scenes, nitty-gritty of the development process and all the things I went through and my thought patterns while doing it. Finally, the design details of the new product and the results after a year of using it. All right, so background. My first priority, I'm kind of a car nut. My first priority is the driving experience. I don't necessarily want to be the fastest, although that's fun. I don't necessarily want it to be the softest ride, although that's fun. I don't necessarily want it to be the hardest ride and take the corners the best. I want the overall driving experience to be fun in normal road conditions. I daily drive the vehicles that I like. I can't stand leaving your favorite vehicle in a garage for all but a couple hours, during the weekend. So I drive mine daily, and so I want it to have the best driving experience possible. That is why one of the reasons I picked the 2005 Pontiac GTO. The parts of the equation that mattered to me was I wanted a robust power curve with a wonderful soundtrack, meaning the engine noise, not the stereo. I wanted it to handle good, both in a straight line and on corners, and I wanted it to be practical enough to be able to daily drive without, getting in and out of a roll cage, having to take a helmet off or undo, a 5-point harness. And so that was my criteria, and that's what led me to the 2005 Pontiac GTO. You can't beat the V8 power curve of an American V8. You just can't beat it. The soundtrack you can't beat, especially of a Chevy, an LS series engine. You just can't beat the soundtrack. With just some slight modifications, you have an absolute symphony of just wonderful engine noises. It has 4-wheel independent rear suspension, which is a little bit different than every other American muscle car to that point, with the exception, I think the Mustangs made a special version that they got rid of the live rear axle and they put independent rear suspension in the back. But other than that, the Pontiac GTO, made between 2004 and 2006, was the most refined American muscle car to date. And sadly, that's probably a little bit because it was built in Australia and the chassis was designed in Germany. It shares a lot of design details with BMWs, so it's kind of sad that we had to import our refinement. But that V8, that's all American. The transmission, that's all American. And the tire smoke it makes, that's all American too. So it was really a great combination. The biggest downside that it had was I got a 6-speed manual. Every vehicle I get is a manual. And its biggest downside was the transmission is a very big, brutal, clunky transmission. It's made to take a lot of horsepower. It's the same transmission they put in the Viper for a while. It's been in all kinds of vehicles that make power. It's kind of the go-to transmission if you want to make power. It can take 800 horsepower. That being said, in order to take that horsepower, all the gears are big and the teeth are big and everything about it is clunky. The shifting experience is not that refined and can be kind of downright brutal and annoying, especially as the engine starts to wear, or the transmission starts to have some wear in it. So that's what led me to want to improve the experience as much as I could. Now, there are various ways to do that. One way is to install a short shifter assembly that basically, changes the distance between the gates, and it also tightens up the stock shifter assembly. This is the upper part that bolts to the shifter assembly. The shifter assembly is what's down below here, and that is on the stock one is a little clunky and not very tight and has a large throw. And so one way that people improve that is by installing lower shifter assemblies. Those are kind of expensive. If you want to get a good one, they're like $500-$600, and you also have to drop the transmission and install it. And I wanted to see how good I could get the stock shifter assembly to feel, and so I tossed this one and started working on a new one. So first off, let's see why this one could possibly be not that great. So first of all, probably the biggest thing that's wrong with the stock shifter is right down in there is rubber, and that is to kind of mask or hide how clunky and rigid feeling the stock transmission can be. And so I'm not. It looks like a thermoset process that maybe it's. Let's see how hard that is. Let me give you my durometer estimate. Oh yeah. Oh, that's really soft. Yeah, that's probably like a 50. Yeah, I'm gonna say that's a 50A durometer thermoset compound that they put that in there, and it holds the tooling, and then they pour it in there, and it seals up. Excuse me. And so this shifter is really numb. Another thing that makes it numb is how heavy this is right here. And in I'll do a little bit of the weight comparison later on once I clear all this stuff out. And so it's heavy and it's numb, and it just doesn't give any feedback. I also don't particularly like the shape of it. I don't like the stitching. I'm just not a fan. And also, it's got some miles on it. I drive it a lot, so this one was just worn out anyway. And also the skirt, the boot skirt, it comes all the way up to the top, and I don't know, something about that just doesn't like when you see a Ferrari or high-end performance car, they don't have a pyramid skirt, leather skirt coming up to, like, this just looks like a early 2000s General Motors Pontiac design with the boot on it, and it just it doesn't remind me of performance when I see it. So I also didn't like the aesthetics. So no feel, very little leverage, because it's not very tall, and didn't look good. So that's what I didn't like about the old one. So moving on to how I set about trying to fix that. And so the first thing I did was I was like, there has to be something better than this. And so I bought an aftermarket one that was available off the internet. And the first one I bought was the long version of this. And it was, I think it was like 2 inches longer. And I broke it within a matter of weeks. And I think it's probably not difficult for you guys to see why. I mean, can you, like, if you go in there, look in there, and then right there, like the amount of metal that is supposed to take all that leverage, if you could like slice this open right there, there's just not hardly anything. This is stainless steel, and there's hardly anything. And I eventually fatigued the metal, and it just broke right there, right where you would expect it to. And this thing cost $80, and the company wouldn't refund my money. They did send me a shorter one, but that kind of defeated the purpose because I did want a little taller shifter for more leverage and more confidence. So I did try to solve this problem with the aftermarket, but I just couldn't find one that was up to the standards that I wanted. So I started making prototypes. And so here was one of the first prototypes I made as far as the rod goes. And this knob was very close to what I ended up with, but you see I started with some knobs that you could buy, and I had this this basically has to be interference fit in here to match up with aftermarket knobs. So, but then I kind of got tired of the selection of aftermarket knobs, and I started developing my own. So here's some 3D prints of ones. This was just a shell, which you can print really quickly just to get a feel. Didn't like that. This one was good, but yeah, the height wasn't quite right. Yeah, this one was okay, but I mean, it was just my pinky didn't. I don't know. I didn't like it, and so I did settle on. I found the perfect shape that I think like just was awesome. It was awesome to rest your hand on. It was awesome to wrap around. Your pinky gets right here, and then that one, the next shortest finger gets right there, and then these, and just resting your hand when you're just cruising on there. That's a very nice, flat, comfortable surface, big radius. So I found the perfect shape that I thought was like, man, this is a great shape. So then I started experimenting with different materials and different weights. So this one is plastic. So let me clear this out of here. Show you some of the. Let's see. Okay, so the stock one, 11.5 ounces. So like, okay, well maybe it needs to be heavier. Maybe I need to get the best shifting experience, I need it to be heavier. So I went with that bad boy. That is a solid chunk of stainless steel, and it kind of blurred out some of the clunkiness of the transmission, but it also numbed the transmission a little bit, so you couldn't really feel that it was in gear like you could with a lighter knob. So then I moved on to solid aluminum, and I had a version of this that was solid. And so it was. That was a lot lighter. That was lighter than the original. And then I tried glass-filled nylon. That's really light. And you know, this Honda Civic aftermarket one. And so I found out that I found the shape I liked, and then I honed in on the weight that I liked. And it turned out the weight that was perfect really was lighter. The lighter you go, you don't. If you're having to add weight to your shifter, it means that there's something else wrong. Like there's something wrong. And so that's what that was probably the lightest of all of them, isn't it? Yeah. So that's really well cored out. And so I ended up going with a high-end engineering plastic that really takes a finish really well, and it has an added benefit of. See, quality materials, they get better with age. They don't get worse looking over time. They get better. And so this is that same material, and it started out with this finish, and then as you use it, it just your own wear pattern develops into it, kind of like fine wood on a stair railing in an old house, how it's been worn down by your own oils and your and use. That's what happens with this one. And to me, that patina that it gets on it, it just feels really nice after you wear it in, and I think it also looks nice too. So this is the brand new one. This is the ones I ended up going with, and I did also have a problem with. You can see that one has the tiny little threads in there. I had a problem with bending threads. This one wasn't bent, but I bent a previous one because the T56 is a really heavy transmission. So and you gotta really put, especially sometimes reverse wears out, and getting it into reverse can be like you use all your strength type of thing. So I did not want to have to worry about any weight issues at all, or not weight issues, any strength issues at all. And so I bored that big boy out right there, as you can see. So this is what's on most aftermarket shifters. That's the weakest part right there, and that's the one that I ended up with. This thing ain't going nowhere. All right, so before we get to that, into the rod, there was the boot. So the boot was held by this traditionally, and so I had to come up with a new solution to that because I didn't like the boot coming up, and I like to see the shifter. I want the shifter to be like a centerpiece, a design piece where you see the engineering that went into it. I didn't want to hide all this, machining that I did. So I wanted to expose that. So I experimented with a number of different kind of boots that basically are boot retainment that basically use the same idea. It just the rubber has kind of a tight spot on it that just kind of slips over there. And I didn't really like it. Kept slipping out. It didn't. And I also didn't like the look. And so these were a couple of those that I went through, 3D print, high end. The same material right here. So there's some various versions I went through, and what I finally ended up with was I wanted the boot to just sit at the very bottom and kind of just sit there, and this is what I ended up with, and it just works so well. So while you're installing it, you can just have that right up there. It's being retained. It's the same threads, and then you get all your bolts installed and everything, and get it tightened down, and then you wrap the boot around this spot right here, and then you drop it down, and it's I sized that space in there really to be a perfect tightness on the thickness of the leather boot, and you just spin, and as you spin it kind of works its way up in there until it gets to its dead end shoulder, and then boom, and it's pressed up in there, and it doesn't come out. So that was that problem solved. This is just a spacer right here that's made out of carbon fiber nylon, so it doesn't. It's a very high temp material because the transmission does get hot. So you need a material that's not gonna melt, traditional plastic, and it's carbon fiber. It's carbon fiber filled nylon, so that's about as strong as you get. and also that is the noise that the metal clinking noises that your transmission makes, it's a very hard plastic, so you do get all the feel of the gear coming through, but you don't get that metal on metal clink coming through the transmission nearly as much, and that's why I picked a composite solution for that part. So okay, moving on. So then this is the entire thing right here that replaced this entire thing. And so you will notice that it is taller. Now, a lot of people, and I'm sure everybody wants something different out of their transmission, but I do not want a shifter that I'm going like I want to know that I'm shifting. Especially, I got a V8 with 400 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds of torque. I want to know that I'm shifting. I want that shifting. I don't want to minimize that shifting experience. I want to maximize that shifting experience. I want it to be as fulfilling as possible, and also I want to be able to feel the gears and have leverage and certainty and confidence that I'm in gear when I do it. And so as you can see, I did experiment with various different heights. This one is a little somewhere in between. Yeah, it's a little bit. Yeah, and I had ones that were the same size. This one I did use this one for a while, which is a little bit shorter than stock. Once you install a thing onto it, let's see how far it goes. This is I think the 6-inch Siki brand. So let's see. Yeah, it's a little bit shorter. And so I experimented with all different kinds of weights, all different heights, and this is what I ended with. So it is, you can see that it is about maybe an inch taller than, right about an inch taller than stock. And so what I can say with confidence is this is about as good as you can get the stock shifter on a T56. without paying $500 and dropping your transmission and replacing the upper or the lower shifter assembly. This is about as good as it gets. And so after a year of using it, I haven't changed my mind on that. It's only reinforced it that this weight is perfect. The feel of this finish, and I didn't go into this plastic. I forgot to. Got sidetracked. But this particular plastic that I picked for here, it's called acetal homopolymer, and basically it accepts a finish really, really well. Basically like metal. Like you can put metal. One of the properties of metal is you can give it. It's very dense and has a very fine surface structure, so that you can give it almost any finish you want to. You can make it you can make it mirror polish, which this isn't. This is a little bit of a matte finish for aesthetics, but you can give it a mirror polish, like diamond, A1 mold finish, or you can give it the roughest, like sandblasted 80 grit, and just make it whatever you're going for. You can do it. And that's why I picked this particular plastic, is because not all plastics will accept a finish very well, and not all plastics will maintain that finish or age well over time. And acetal homopolymer is just a very stable, dense, high-end engineering plastic. And why I picked it to be plastic instead of, because I could have gotten an aluminum one that was basically the same weight. Aluminum is just a little bit heavier than acetal, but with the amount of volume that is, it's not much of a difference. But I live in Florida. On hot days, you do not want a solid metal shifter. You just don't. Not if you're daily driving it. If you're only taking it out on the weekends and it's coming out of your garage, then I guess you don't care. But maybe if you live in the north and you come out to your car and it's 0 degrees outside, stainless steel or aluminum shifter is probably not going to feel too good either. So that is why I picked the acetal homopolymer, and it really the lightness is exactly what you want. You don't need the weight of the metal, and you get the added benefit of having this nice soft velvety finish that you can put on it, and it has a low thermal conductivity transfer rate, low thermal conductivity, which means it doesn't transfer the heat that is built up in the sun to your hand when you touch it, and doesn't suck the heat out of your hand when it's cold. So it's very comfortable, very smooth to the touch, and again, the shape to my hand and what I like. I can't make it any better. All right, now lastly, guys, I did do some other modifications to get the shifting experience that I wanted. So if you think that you need a lot of weight, that is because the detents in your transmission are a little too stiff. The notches that control that, okay, you're in gear or you're out of gear on each gear, they're a little too aggressive. And there is actually an adjustment that you can do on probably most transmissions, but it's very easy to do on the T56 transmission, and it's called the Anti-Venom Mod. And basically you just add some washers. You can Google it, and it's very easy to do. There's a bolt you take out on the side of your transmission, and you can add some washers to it, and it reduces the amount of compression on the spring that controls the detents on each gear. And so I did that, and then once you do that, if you have weighted shifters, you're going to immediately not want a weighted shifter, because you don't need it after that. Because now the detent, to get it into gear, you don't need that inertial assist that comes with a really heavy shifter. So that's why it can be light. And then the additional, so you have leverage. So the leverage lets you overcome the rest of the unrefinement of the heavy gears and the heavy lever arms and shifting processes that's going on internally. The extra leverage is what then kind of gives you back that control. And then the feel, because you're not having it's not having to go through rubber. All the information that the gearbox is trying to tell your hand is not being filtered by leather and rubber. That's hard plastic going to a beefy, solid 6061 T6 aluminum shaft directly into a hard engineering plastic, and that recipe turns into a telepathic shifting, which means the transmission is telling you, just like screaming at you, everything that it's doing. So when you shift into gear on a speed shift, doing a 40 roll street race with some Mustang you want to beat, you know 100% that it is in gear, because you had the leverage and the feedback to make sure that it was in gear, and you didn't have the transmission's communication to your hand dulled by weight or leather or rubber. All of that is taken out. And so when you add all those things up, it really comes together. And I know it seems silly to think that the driving refinement can be improved so much just by replacing one relatively simple component. But when you pay attention to details and you do trial and error and go through a bunch of different prototypes and learn what to do and what not to do, then eventually you can improve a subtle problem like that through engineering and through testing and through development. All right, so I know this was a long-winded video, guys. I've been rambling a lot, but I'm passionate about this particular subject. It combines my two passions, which is product design and motor vehicles. So I figured I'd spill my guts here and give you guys all the nitty-gritty details. So it's unlikely that anybody in my subscriber base has a GTO, because they are pretty rare. But if you do have one and you're looking to improve the experience, the link to buy this is in the description below. They are made to order, hand machined, or not hand machined, but machined and polished in the United States by me. And if you're coming to this link, from the forums or GTO forums, the link is in the bottom, in the description below. If you know somebody with a GTO, shoot them this video, and maybe they'll be interested in it. All right, guys, please like and subscribe if you like the video. If you have a comment or question, leave it down below. I pretty much answer every single one. And if you like the content and the type of things I talk about, then share this with somebody that you think is as much of a nerd as you are. All right, guys, until next time, I will see you.